My brain is so loud. That was the thought that hit me sitting alone at a state park in Colorado. Last week, I mentioned that July is National Anti-Boredom Month, and it reminded me of two experiences that completely changed the way I think about boredom. I was in Colorado completing an advanced certification to become a mindfulness and meditation teacher. One afternoon, our instructor gave us what sounded like one of the easiest assignments of the week. Go outside. Find a quiet place. No phone, no electronics, no books, no music, no conversation. Just a yoga mat, a notebook, some water, and several hours with yourself. I remember thinking, I've got this. I did not have it. I remember thinking, this is going to be wonderful. It wasn't. Within minutes, my mind was racing. Work, clients, things I needed to remember, things I needed to do, conversations I'd had, conversations I didn't have, conversations I should have had differently, dinner, my calendar, how much time had passed, how much time was left. Nothing bad was happening. I wasn't even anxious. I wasn't upset. I simply couldn't settle. I wasn't sitting peacefully in nature. I was sitting inside Grand Central Station. I remember laughing because here I was becoming certified to teach mindfulness and meditation. And I had just discovered something about myself. My brain had become accustomed to constant activity. That afternoon changed the way I think about boredom. Actually, it changed the way I think about presence. Years later, I realized it explained something else I'd never fully understood. Before I got sober, I visited my parents about once a month. Here's the part that's a little uncomfortable to admit. I couldn't wait for those visits to be over, not because I didn't love my parents. I loved them dearly. My mom was sober, and drinking in front of my parents wasn't even something I considered. But if I'm being completely honest, there was something my brain was already anticipating when I was with them. Going home, pouring a drink. Without realizing it, I had trained my brain to believe the reward always came later. The visit became something to get through, not something to be in. Then I got sober. I kept making those monthly trips. At first, I expected them to feel even longer because I had removed the thing I had been looking forward to while there. Instead, something unexpected happened. I'd stay for another cup of coffee. The conversations lasted longer. Sometimes I'd lose track of time. One afternoon, it hit me. My parents had not become more interesting. My brain had changed. I wasn't spending the entire visit anticipating what came next. I was actually present for the visit itself. That lesson stayed with me for more than 35 years. It's also one of the reasons I get curious when someone tells me they're bored. Because boredom isn't a diagnosis, it's a symptom. The question is, a symptom of what? Many of the executives and professionals I work with have calendars that would make most people feel overwhelmed. They're leading companies, managing employees, making high-stakes decisions, raising children, caring for aging parents, managing finances, putting out fires all day long. Their lives aren't lacking activity. Under chronic stress, that question gets louder. What comes next? One more email, one more meeting, one more deadline, one more crisis, one more achievement, one more drink, one more scroll, one more purchase, one more. Eventually, the brain becomes so focused on the next reward that it stops noticing the one that's already here. I've learned that boredom is rarely the whole story. When executives tell me they're bored, when someone newly sober tells me they're bored, when someone recovering from burnout tells me they're bored, I don't immediately think they need more excitement. I start wondering what their brain has learned to anticipate. Because our brains are prediction machines. They're constantly asking, what comes next? That's why I often tell clients that everything psychological is biological. The experience of pleasure isn't simply an emotion, it's a neurological process. Your brain has systems responsible for motivation, anticipation, reward, satisfaction, attention, and novelty. Those systems adapt. They adapt to alcohol. They adapt to chronic stress. They adapt to trauma. They adapt to burnout. They adapt to years of operating at full speed. The nervous system always learns from the environments we repeatedly place it in. That's one reason many people experience something called anhedonia. Anhedonia simply means a reduced ability to experience pleasure. People describe it like this: nothing sounds fun. I don't enjoy the things I used to. I finally have free time, but I don't know what I want to do. I thought life would feel different than this. I've heard those words from physicians, attorneys, business owners, parents, executives, people recovering from depression, people recovering from trauma, people recovering from alcohol, people recovering from chronic executive stress. Notice something. None of those people necessarily have boring lives. Many of them have incredibly full lives. The issue isn't a lack of stimulation. It's that the nervous system has calibrated its expectations. Ordinary moments begin to feel ordinary, not because they've changed, because the brain has. The good news is that brains calibrate in both directions. Just as my brain learned to stop rushing through the visit with my parents, just as I eventually learned to enjoy the conversation instead of anticipating what came afterward, then one day you finally sit down with nothing urgent demanding your attention, and your brain doesn't know what to do with the quiet. Not because the quiet is bad, but because the quiet has become unfamiliar. That same thing happens when someone stops drinking, or stops scrolling, or stops gambling, or stops overworking. The unhealthy coping strategy wasn't simply changing how they felt emotionally. It was changing what their brain expected. Once that source of stimulation disappears, ordinary life can feel surprisingly flat. People often misinterpret that experience. They tell themselves, my marriage is boring, my job is boring, sobriety is boring, my life is boring. Maybe, but maybe not. Maybe your brain has simply become conditioned to believe that the reward is always somewhere else. The next drink, the next promotion, the next vacation, the next relationship, the next notification, the next purchase, the next bet, the next accomplishment, the next crisis, the next... That's an exhausting and difficult way to live because you're never actually where you are. You're always psychologically 5 minutes in the future. The good news is this: brains change. The same nervous system that learned to chase intensity can learn to appreciate subtlety. The same reward system that adapted to chronic stimulation can recalibrate. The same brain that learned to overlook ordinary moments can learn to find satisfaction in conversations over coffee. Quiet evenings, meaningful work, time with people you love. I've lived it. I've watched Thousands of clients live it. That's why I have so much hope, because meaningful change isn't about forcing yourself to enjoy life. Your nervous system can relearn how to experience ordinary life. That's one of the most hopeful things I know. Recovery isn't simply about removing alcohol. Burnout recovery isn't simply about taking a vacation. Healing isn't simply about reducing stress. It's about teaching the brain that it no longer has to live in constant anticipation of the next thing. Sometimes the reward isn't later. Sometimes it's the cup of coffee, the conversation, the walk, the quiet evening, the people already sitting in front of you. And sometimes the most important thing that changes isn't your life. It's your ability to experience it. That's the architecture of healing. And that's why I have so much hope for the people I work with. If today's conversation resonated with you and you're beginning to realize that alcohol isn't really the problem, it's the way your brain and nervous system learned to respond to executive stress, I have a few ways that we can continue the conversation. I'm personally accepting just 3 founding members into my signature coaching program, Sober in the C-Suite. The first 3 members will receive my founding member rate in exchange for helping me shape the next generation of the program. While the framework is built on more than 35 years of clinical experience and long-term recovery, your feedback will help me refine and strengthen the coaching experience for the future members. Together, we'll identify the sources of your executive stress, uncover the patterns driving alcohol use or other unhealthy coping, and build a personalized blueprint that helps you lead with greater clarity, resilience, and intention without sacrificing your health, your relationships, or your future. If you're thinking this is exactly what I've been looking for, you'll find a link in the description below or in my link tree to schedule a confidential consultation. If coaching isn't the next right step just yet, I'd still love to stay connected. Follow my Dr. Joe Sober in the C-Suite Facebook page for weekly videos, practical tools, and evidence-informed strategies. And I invite you to join my free private Facebook support community where professionals come together to learn, ask questions, and support one another as they build healthier, more sustainable, strategic lives. If you found this video helpful, I'd be grateful if you give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and share it with somebody who could benefit. Every like, comment, and share helps this message reach people who may be quietly struggling and looking for a different way forward.